Welcome to Noble, a network of owners, business leaders, and entrepreneurs. Here, we focus on the 5 stages of business: launching an idea, establishing a business, hiring employees, creating leaders, and then expanding your impact. We hope you enjoy today's session.
So please welcome Bobby Davern up to the front with me today. All right, have a seat. Have a seat. All right, so Bobby, the first thing, and one of the things that I want to even get to know more about you is about your family. I've met a little bit of your family, but boy, you have a much bigger family than I realized even when we first got to know each other. So kind of give us a little bit about your family.
Yep. Well, me and my wife believe God's word, and he said to be fruitful, and we believed it, and he made it so.
Well, that's a simplistic but a powerful answer.
So we have 5 biological children, and then we have 2 other boys that we are blessed and privileged to raise. One since he was 10, and another boy since he was 14, and then one is 26 now, another one's 22.
Wow.
So cool background story. The oldest one, he's from Bangladesh. His name is Jackaria. I met him at a wrestling camp. His parents saved their whole life savings and sent his 3 older brothers with him. And they're 18, 16, 14, and 10. And then I was hosting a wrestling camp, and the brothers had to work, and the father had shipped them there and left them there with jobs at restaurants and such, and said it'd be a better opportunity for them to have a better future here in the United States than in Bangladesh. And so my boys befriended him at this wrestling camp because they dropped him off in the summer to give him something to do, and then the rest was history. He was a goofy young man, and his shoes, his tennis shoes were falling apart, and my boys noticed him and just not intentionally, just went up to him and just spent time with him, and then after a period of time of developing trust with his brothers, we asked, hey, we know there's a lot of need. We'd be willing to take him in and help develop and raise him. And so he was a multi-state, and he was passionate about wrestling, real scrappy young guy, real tough, always fought for everything. Learned that from probably living in a third world country. And then, so that was pretty amazing. And then, through that process, he wanted to, get a scholarship through wrestling, and became very successful at wrestling, got a scholarship to Kent State, graduated, and I made him work in the corporate world for a year, and then he came and worked in our roofing business. And I put a really good team around him, developed him for his first year. This would have been last year, and became our top sales guy, and just bought his house, raising a family. And so it's cool to see what God can do. So great story. And so we were just so blessed to have him a part of our lives. And then, so he's our oldest that we consider ours, not legally adopted, but then I have a 24-year-old biological son. His name's Caleb. So Jackie's oldest. Caleb is our biological. He's graduating for Fisher Business School, and he's currently a professional golfer, going through Q school in September. And so really excited for him. And then Corey is another boy that I met through wrestling, coaching at Dublin Kaufman. And he's 22. He was being raised by his mother. His father wasn't very active in his life, and she was concerned about some of the development processes that he was going through and challenges, and asked, me and my wife if we would get involved and help raise him. And so we took him in and started helping groom him to the young man he is today. He didn't want to go to college. He was an amazing wrestler, and started working for my paving company. And now in just 4 years, he's our top operator, runs big road milling machines, he's our foreman, and he's 22. So he was this bashful young kid, and now he's like this real confident young man. And so that's been an amazing process. Then I have a 20-year-old, he just turned 20, son. He didn't want to go to college either, so he transitioned, started working in the paving company when he was 16 and 17, and then when he was 18, I made him take a work gap year because they're all homeschooled, and say enjoy your friends. They're all going to be going off to college, have fun. And then after that year of having fun and experiences, he came back, started working for me again. And now he's a foreman for one of our paving crews, which is amazing. He's only 20 years old, and he's really blossoming in his leadership, and he's a high level operator as well. So pretty cool. Then my daughter's 15. She's the only girl. She's our princess. She's tougher in nails and sweeter than anything. So I love it. She's nurturing and mothering, and also just a huge blessing. She's real involved in Rock City Church and serves almost full time there. It seems like she's always there, and student leadership and things like that. And then I have a 12-year-old son, Spencer, who's real passionate about sports and athletics, real gifted. He's at a wrestling tournament today that I'm going to go get to watch him, and so he'll really excel in sports, and just a real diligent, disciplined young man. It's amazing the threshold he has. And then I have a carbon copy of myself. His name is Tay, and most persistent, ornery young man you ever meet. Smart as a whip, relationally intelligent, and looks almost like me. So it's a lot of fun. God thought it would be a sick joke. What my parents went through. But he's way smarter than I ever was. So that's a lot of fun. And cool story about him is my wife had 4 C-sections, a lot of difficulty with birth. So to be that fruitful, we're so blessed. And so she already had her tubes tied, and we even had the ink test because she couldn't give birth anymore because it would have risked her life. And then through that, then she got pregnant, but she said she's been pregnant multiple times. We lost 2, unfortunately, and then she's like, I feel like I'm pregnant, but I can't be. It's impossible. And so she had the thing in her arm, the IU thing, I don't know, something, to keep her from getting pregnant too. So like no chance of being pregnant. And then she went and got tested, and they said, you're pregnant. And she's like, what in the world? It's impossible. We were worried about like a tubular pregnancy because her tubes are tied. And like, no, it's, we went and had the ultrasound, and it was in the womb, and we're like, oh my God, this is insane. So Tay really wanted to be born. God really wanted to be born. He's that persistent too. I've never met someone, I've worked and been networked with, thousands of people. And even like he started riding a bike when he was 2, when he was just a little guy. He wanted cookies on the top of the fridge. He got the pans out. He could barely walk. He walked at 7 months. And so at 6 months, he's, piling up pans and crawling on top of the counter and then getting on top of the fridge just to get a cookie. And I was like, man, he's got that ingrained in him, which is pretty amazing. And so that was a long-winded story, just tell you about my family, but I think it's really groomed me into the man of God I am, because it really gave me a perspective to understand how, God is a father to us, and, how I'm a father to my children, and, how differently they are, and how God imprinted in them who they are, and we just get to cultivate and help develop those things. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we can just stop right there. Great story. I mean, what more do you need to do in this world than that, right?
Right.
Than raise a family and turn them into great citizens and people of the kingdom, right?
Yeah. And my wife, she's the anchor in our family. She loves the Lord, and she told me when we were young, she said, when we raise our children, I want to protect the integrity of their hearts, and so, our first son, biological son, went to school just for a short period of time. She pulled him right out and said, things he's being exposed to in the communication. She's like, I want to build him up in God's word, to be able to defend those things and to be grounded in who, he should be in Christ. And so, she took the responsibility, which is a huge responsibility, and God bless us with resources. I mean, she worked 3 jobs while I built our first business. She nannied, worked a night job just to provide for our family. So she's tough lady. So she is the anchor of who we are. So
wow.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, maybe I should have had her.
You should.
The anchor. I want to meet and talk to the anchor.
Yeah. It's easy to remember her name, so it's Bobby and Whitney.
Yeah.
Whitney. Bobby Brown, Whitney.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that makes me think of a question that I hadn't thought of ahead of time. And And you haven't adopted the young men that you've got
No,
that are
not
not
legally.
biological. So how you made that work? I mean, that, usually society sometimes against you, government, it's like, what are you doing? I mean, how do you make that work?
We just, I don't think, we really didn't have any difficulties with society.
Okay.
I think everybody was encouraged and saw the involvement that we had and just, bring them in and spending time with them. And, Jackeria, lived with us and Corey lived with us for a good period of time and just investing into them. Didn't really experience any obstacles. So,
Okay. Well, let's hear, we ask everybody this, and this is the key kind of, where we get started, but tell us about, little Bobby and how you, started, your first business of whatever kind and your education, that kind of thing. So tell us about little guy.
Yeah, so when I was young, I always had a entrepreneur spirit. Me and my brother had a paper route when we were younger. And, I was always the one that I was good at delivering the papers and I was good at collecting just enough money so I could go get, Snicker bars at the deli and go to the arcade and left the rest for my brother to collect. So my brother would be building those Sunday papers and I would come in the last minute and try to help and scramble. But I was always diligent, waking up and getting the papers out because I wanted to collect that money, to have fun. And my brother would always, collect and save, and I never had anything when I was there. I was always eating cheeseburgers and at McDonald's and buying burgers for my friends.
Well, and in your business, what does your brother do for you?
Oh, he's our CFO. So I always tell people like, I'm the disciple that God breaks the bread and goes multiply. He goes back and picks up all the scrap. So we have profitability. We got to spend it all.
But that's great, and that's the thing about seeing the, the wiring, the blessings, the gifts that God has given. You can see those at a young age, just like Tay and
Yes,
the others.
100%.
You're seeing that stuff, right? So how are you? Because I actually haven't talked to you about this, but how are you specifically developing each one of them in their strengths? What do you guys do to encourage you, and what do you do to encourage that?
So, for my oldest biological son, Caleb, he had a real passion. He was really smart and would, finish his schoolwork in an hour or two at homeschooling, and then he would, he's very disciplined, like my 12-year-old, and he had a capacity of just this hunger for me to pour into him and to challenge him and fitness and health. And he'd write little 8 pull-ups on the wall and put a sticky tab on, and then he's trying to break his own goals. So we fed into that and challenged him and put him into sports. And we started living in Florida in the winter times because we were able to be snowbirds since we were homeschooling, and then allow him to train full-time down there for golf. And then he excelled at golf. And then for my second oldest son, we try to identify things like he was more social and way more relational, connected. Like my oldest son still has 1 or 2 friends. My son Jordan, my second oldest biological, has dozens of friends and in huge communities. So we put him in we noticed those things and we put him in like Boy Scouts and community events and different environments like that. And any social environment we try to plug him into and he would thrive. Or like Tay, he loves to work with his hands. And so, and Spencer loves to be outside. And so my wife goes to a park, public park every week to take him to climb trees and fish and do whatever he wants to do. And then for someone like Tay, who's always wanted to work with his hands, she puts him in like the science camps and goes to COSI. And then we get like the Lego set gets sent to us every week, a different one. And then he builds it in 10 minutes and gets another. I don't want to buy them because they're like $100 a piece, and Legos are crazy. And then these little engineering kits. So Tay's always using his mind and thinking through process and build. So we kind of identify those things from relational to practical, and then we just plug them in. And then things that are important to us is just getting them into youth ministries and sporting events to help develop their social environment and skills and service. So
Wow.
So very specific and very intentional. And then we did a really good job. Like, we call them the bigs and littles, and so we'll do group dates, individual dates, constantly. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of but it's all intentionality. But we see we have such a great unit in our family, and it's a real blessing. And then my wife drives all that, you know, so she's great.
Perfect partner.
Yeah, heck yeah, it is.
Perfect partner.
So
Well, then tell us about your parents. So how did they feed into you to, you know, to get you thinking, you know, the way you do?
yeah, my parents, my dad was so I was an Army brat, so we traveled a lot. And, my dad met my mother in Korea when he was stationed there. And so, with all that traveling, it was a little exhausting, but my dad worked his tail off, and, we're extremely poor because my mom didn't speak great English and didn't have a lot of work skills to get jobs here in the United States. So we lived with my grandmother when we were young. My dad would rebuild engines on the side, and then work for the aviation department for the Air National Guard. And then when we landed in Westerville, Ohio, right here in Hubert Ridge, me and my brother were like, "Oh, Dad, we're so sick of moving, and it's real difficult to have friends." And he said, "Okay." And so he ended up taking a job on 161. So we moved off of Sawmill Road. There's an Army facility over there, and then made some sacrifices, and we planted there. And then my mother started a small restaurant across in Marysville, Ohio, right across from Bob Chapman Ford. There's just a little restaurant. So she made some Korean cuisines and some subs and some American cuisines, and they would deliver a lot of lunches to all the factories around Honda, Scott's, and whatnot. And so we got to participate in some of those things. But my dad had a tenacious work ethic, and my mom was real principled. So my dad would, go to work at 4:30 in the morning, because then he got shipped to Rickenbacker, and we said we don't want to move anymore. So he would drive every day to Rickenbacker and work out of there, and then he'd come home. So 4:30 in the morning, he'd come home, take a 2-hour nap around like 4:30. Drive out to the restaurant to Marysville, work all night with my mom, and then come. So his sleeping shifts would be, 3 to 4 hours at night and 2 hours in the afternoon. Every single day. He did that for years as we grew up together. So a good provider, and so they worked a lot just to maintain, to allow me and my brother to grow up in a good community. So learned a lot from my mom, and my mom was so principled. I'll never forget, I was working with her one night, and it was, snowing, it was probably a 1.5 feet in Marysville. I was like, it's gonna be dangerous for us to get home. And it was 10 o'clock, and I think we closed at 11, and I was younger. And I was like, can we leave, shut down? She's like, no, we can't do that, Bobby. She's like, because if someone's coming home from these factories and was expecting to be fed, I'm not gonna close down. And so, cool story about that was that I gleaned that principle, and I was at a trade show, and everybody else was shutting down because it wasn't very busy. Me and a sales guy were sitting at our booth, and I wouldn't let us close it down just because I learned that from my mom. A guy from Atlanta, Georgia, flew in, was looking for someone, and needed some roof repairs and replacement because they were having some trouble with the city. I'm right here in Columbus, and we got, I think, over $2 million worth of work, because we're the only vendor that was still open. So, the things you learn, and when we were younger, and you maintain in those things, those principles, God blesses those for sure. So those life properties of the company. Yeah. Great. And he literally was coming off the plane, ran into the trade show to find a reputable roofing company to provide that service. So amazing.
Wow.
That works out seriously.
Wow. God thing for sure.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, tell us a little bit and share your, how you came to the Lord, and what that means, being a kingdom person, what that means to you.
Yep. So, being raised as an Army brat, and my parents having tenacious work ethics, there was a side to it that was bad, because we didn't have much oversight because they worked all the time, just to be able to pay for our mortgage. So there were some sacrifices that they were making, but creating some problematic things, and rambunctious young men, and me, I have one older sibling, who's our CFO, Jimmy Davern. And so when I was younger, my grandfather died when my dad was 14. So he didn't have a very good role model, and he was at war, or he was in the military doing stations. So didn't have a ton of involvement with him. And so my dad was raising us the best he could. And so, it was all about provision and protection per se. And I don't think he was aware of the lack of protection that we did have. And then he was a really hard guy, militant, a little bitter from losing his dad when he was young and had so much responsibility as a young man. So, he always responded to my behavior, which was bad for me because then he started speaking to that behavior instead of, treating, looking at me for what was my heart. And what happened is the things he would speak to me like, I have a lot of grace for him because, how he was raised, and, he'd call me a derelict, troublemaker, and all these things. And I started believing those things. And then I started behaving like he was telling me I was behaving. So then it just kind of, and with all that free time and being around a lot of young badly influenced young men, we created a lot of trouble, and I got in a lot of trouble. So was arrested several times and charged with all different, from felonies to misdemeanors and all different sorts of things, and put my parents through a lot of trouble, heck. And so through that process, God had a plan, obviously. And so I was on house arrest in Dublin, Ohio, and I was in high school, and all my friends, of course, abandoned me. But I had a friend, his name was John Toth, and he had a deep revelation of God's love, and God, connected him with me, and he would stop by my house and minister to me. And I didn't want him to, but he would. But then it started really sinking in, and by God's grace, he worked through the judge the judge would allow me to go to school, and school was great because I was in a half workday program, and in school, this is how young and rambunctious I was. I was in a program called SBH, Severely Behavioral Handicap, because I couldn't restrain my emotions. I had a lot of anger and all these things when I was really young. And, and they would try to, so I believed all the things people were telling me. I had ADHD and I had all these things. I could control my behaviors. And so I did it. And then my earthly father would speak into me. And so it was just a train wreck happening. And man, I said, but God met me and started speaking to me through a friend named John Toth. And so the only place that I could go was school, and then half-day work program, and then anything related to the church, which was amazing because, then I understand I'm spending my time at youth group and allowing God to have, take a position in my heart. And through that process, I started hearing and believing the things that my Heavenly Father said about me. And then it started really transforming me, and I started pursuing those things and starting to really get a revelation of God's love directly to me. So John Toth, who's the friend that would come to my house and minister to me, became a spiritual mentor for many years, and really transformed my relationship with God through that process. And I went to it's called Discovery Christian Church now in Dublin, next to Myers off of Salma Road. So that's where I encountered God, and had some great leaders there that really spoke into my life. So that's how I came to know the Lord.
I used to coach soccer out of their gymnasium for a little bit.
Really?
Winter, yeah.
Okay.
Discovery Church, yeah.
Yeah.
So great. Any Bible verses that just really speak to you,
Yep.
and family, business, those kind of things. Tell us what some of those standout verses are.
I think Romans 12:2, don't conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Discern God's will is good, pleasing, perfect will. And, for me, that was, it took some time, but I'd always just meditate on that verse when I was young. And so the cool thing that happened was in the work program, I was working on a small car wash in front of Target on Salma Road, and it wasn't very busy because it was new. So I'd sit there and read my Bible all day, and so I had all this free time, and I would just devour the word speaking to me and transforming who I was. And that verse is the first verse that I really got my first revelation, of depth and truth and who God is. And so it really made me take a responsibility for who I was and who I was becoming in Christ, working out my salvation, because I know, God's heavenly blessings and who he is, perfect, Spirit was poured into me, but I wasn't experiencing. Understood I had to renew my mind and get connected in church, spend time in the word, meditate in the word, build myself up in prayer, put myself in community. And when I started doing all those things, I started discerning, oh, this is his good will, this is pleasing will, and started like being transformed. So that verse really, when it's the living word, I was living those truths out. And then the more I invested into renewing my mind daily, the more I was, able to discern and align with God's will and experience his blessing in my life.
Yeah, so it's good.
Mhm.
And this is wild, but when I met Bobby, in the, office that I share with, Rye, as I mentioned earlier, at Fellowship of Christian Athletes, when I saw you, I'm like, I met you or seen you before. I used to go to that car wash. I used to go to that car wash. And so I remember seeing you there, sitting out there. So so now I know where I first saw Bobby. Didn't know who he was. Probably didn't even say two words to each other. But yeah, I used to go to that car wash. Wow. Okay. So
Two cool stories about that. I mean, really, really cool stories. And so, but God's, so faithful. And when faith comes from hearing his word, and when you hear it and then experience it, it just makes you more hungry to receive and to be in the realm of God's favor. And so God's promises, your gifts will put you before kings, right? And so, for me, I was dropping off a donation check to Rye because I do a lot. I serve, and we consistently and faithfully give to FCA because I believe in that platform. And I believe ultimately in the vision that Rye has through that platform, because man, he's the most compassionate, loving, God-fearing person I've ever met. And he just pours into that ministry. So I was dropping off that check to Rye just to see him and a fellowship with him very quickly. And I just left to get my autos license. And I had some God put on my heart. So I went and pursued that. I just finished that. And he was and Chaz was on the phone making these auto deals. And Chad is a king in the business ministry and in ministry. And so God put me before Chaz and created this opportunity for business between the both of us. So really, really cool story. And then other story would be when I was detailing those cars, it was so funny because it's, I came across that verse, work unto the Lord, and I was like, okay. So I was like, every car I come in, Jesus is dropping this off to me and I'm going to clean this car, So I was detailing these cars and then
Jesus' car.
And so I was detailing the heck, I was, blowing everything, getting every stain, and I would just focus it on hours and hours in the detailing center. And then one day a woman came in and she was one of the leads in Les Wexner's household. And she said, wow, this is the most amazing detail job I've ever got. And she said, you did an amazing job. I'm going to bring you another car. So I cleaned another car. And then she said, you know what? Second time she came around, she said, you're really well spoken and I can see how passionate you are. And then the verse started coming alive saying, God promotes those who are faithful. And I wasn't doing anything just to honor God with the work I was putting my hands to. And then she said, you know what, we're looking for a position to detail Les Wexner's personal fleet. And I was like, really? I was like, I really didn't know Les Wexner is until I pulled up to his house, went to a security barn, and went to the garage. Like, you want me to touch these cars? I was only 16, and so I personally worked on his personal fleet, for a couple years, which was amazing. And we all got fired, unfortunately, because his first baby's name got leaked. So they ended up terminating the whole staff because it had to come from the staff somewhere. Yeah, so cool experience, but cool stories from God's truth, because I was reading God's word, sitting in a car wash and saying, okay, work unto the Lord. Okay, I'm going to do that, and just did it. And then God promotes those who are faithful, and I didn't do anything for that. He just promoted me and gave me opportunity and gave me a passion for vehicles and cars and automobiles when I was younger. And then full circle, God just aligns us stuff, just being faithful. If I didn't go and give that check, who knows if I would have, aligned and met with Chaz and been creating this amazing business together for the last, year and a half with multiple, a huge network of divinely orchestrated network people, which is pretty cool. So Long-winded, sorry, I guess.
No, these are great stories. Our Rob Kopp, who opened us in prayer today, turned me on to Dr. Miles Monroe. So if anybody hasn't been familiar with Dr. Miles Monroe, MYLES, MUNROE. Great man of God, and he has unbelievable videos on YouTube. So if you haven't experienced Dr. Miles Monroe, please do so, because one of the big things that he emphasizes quite a bit is purpose. And I remember that he says that 99% of the people in this world have never seriously thought about what their purpose is. I mean, hey, somebody asks you and you just kind of flippantly say, well, yeah, it's my family or whatever, but nobody really takes the time to dive into that. And we've got John Hanson here who again has led actually on the topic of purpose and does that with our Noble Academy class. And but what is your purpose, if you have one? Yep. What is your purpose, and how do you fulfill it?
That goes along with the question right before that about, what my favorite Bible verses are. And I always struggled when I was younger because, I was real passionate and wanted to, honor God with my life, but I always was putting my hands to something, and so I was like, I always struggled that I would have did whatever to honor God with my, time and through work. And I thought I'd have to go to ministry, which I would have been fine with, but I was always drawn to put my hands to something, in the marketplace. And so, God led me to the verse in Genesis 12, blessed to be a blessing. And so that just anchored in my heart constantly. And I was definitely had the gifting of generosity in my heart. Like I said, when I was young, I would always go collect money, but I wouldn't just collect money for myself. I'd always want to buy my friends a Snickers or a pop and always buy the things that, because they didn't have the money, I would provide that. So God always implanted and ingrained that in my heart. And so through that verse in Genesis, blessed to be a blessing, just really became my anchor, purpose, and really incorporates that vision in everything I do. The mission in all my businesses are different, but the purpose of blessed to be a blessing is always, aligns with the vision of who we are, how are we blessed with our giftings and talents and resources, and how are we incorporating that into how are we being a blessing to all of our clients and customers through whatever trade we're doing or whatever product we're offering. So yeah, that is the purpose and even our own family. We're super intentional about involving our kids in everything we're doing because we want to spur that in them and multiply what God's done in us. So we have a thing that's called a giving tree that we created. And so everything that we do, and we haven't done it, for when everybody got busy, but when the kids were younger, what we would do is everything we did, every organization we would give to, when we had plenty, of resources and no resources, of our time, of our services, we would put it on this tree, and then let our kids say, hey, what did you do to give? And so then they would put it on the tree, and we'd have this tree of all these different colors of all the things we would intentionally give towards. Not to boast or brag to our children, but to motivate them to be generous on every occasion as well. So
you got to set that example.
Yeah,
you got to set that example.
So that's our purpose and how to use our giftings in whatever way we can to be a blessing to others.
Wow. So we've met Bobby. All right. We've met the kingdom, through Bobby. Let's start talking about some business.
Yeah.
Okay. So your current businesses, how did those come to be?
Yeah, my main anchored business the first major business I developed was Shamrock Asphalt Services. I wrestled through at Dublin Kaufman, and one summer when I was a teenager, a friend of mine said, "Hey, would you ever be interested in?" I was probably 18 at this time. Got laid off from Les Wexner. And he said, "Hey, I'm working for a company doing seal coating driveways. I'm making this X amount of money, and it's good, it's fun, and it's good money." And I said, "Okay." So I was working for my mom in the evenings, and then I would seal coat driveways with him during the day. And then the business owner was bouncing our payroll checks and charging us for things from the, equipment and all these different things. And so one day on Westerville Road, here in Westerville, I pulled the truck to the side and said, hey, I can't work for you, because the truck actually, I pulled over because the fuel injector was messing up. And he's like, well, that's going to cost you $300. I was like, I don't own this truck. I'm leasing it to work for you. And I was like, that's really unethical. And so I pulled it over, and I had a friend pick me up and stop there. Then a few months later, my buddy was like, hey, you want to try to do this with me? And I said, yeah, it's not that hard. And so we got a little pickup truck and got some buckets and started going around in tartan fields, knocking on doors, getting cussed out. And, they gave me some tough skin. They gave me some choice words, and some were inviting, some weren't. And
there's tartan fields people.
Yeah, it was tough, man. I hated it. And I was like, man, I hated rejection because I felt rejected by my earthly father at times. So
sure,
man, I really had to fight through that. But I knew I had to do it, so, just kept knocking doors and hanging flyers. I was like, I like hanging flyers much better.
Quickly run up and run up.
And then,
Getting dogs sicked out on you.
Right? Yeah, so then it just manifested, the friend of mine that I wrestled with, he wanted to go to Florida and sell real estate. So I was like, I'm gonna stick this out. I'm just gonna keep doing it. And I had other opportunities, the car wash, the owner of the car wash wanted me to manage his car wash. My mom wanted me to work in the restaurant. Some weird reason, I didn't know why, and everybody told me not to do it, to pursue this seal coating business. And it was messy, it was dirty, and I just felt compelled to do it. And so it just organically grew. I didn't have much of an education. I barely graduated from Ohio State. I mean, from Dublin, Kaufman. It was the last year before it split off, and so not much of an education, and just really boots on the ground. I worked, extremely hard, and I really lived out that urge to go to the extra mile. That's I'll talk about that later, because it's one of our super strengths in our company. And that was the birth of our first business. Now we're 25 years later. It's one of the mid-level, not road construction, but like property management, office buildings, churches, things like that. We're one of the larger mid-sized companies in all of Ohio. And then we do work in Indiana, Michigan, and sometimes we'll go to Virginia for some of our national accounts. Done a lot of work for Ohio State, but the office building behind here, we paved that. So many properties around Columbus for the last 25 years. We've been blessed and fortunate to be a part of. So that was my first business, and it took me a long time. I grew organically and very slow because didn't have much education, and had to learn a lot of things the hard way, through, especially in like 2008, 2009, and all those things. God really maneuvered a lot of different things through that process. And then it manifested. I always wanted to be a serial entrepreneur, and then I had some good people around me that would encourage me. Hey, don't the best way to destroy your he used chicken store. Your first chicken store is create a second one. So till when I was traveling back and forth to Florida and Ohio with my family, and knew that first organization was sustainable. We had the proper processes and systems, and I recruited the right leadership, and it can be sustained without me being there. Then I started a second organization, and then manifested organization after that. And then we really try to grow organically too. So the first organization was Shamrock, Asphalt Services, and then I saw opportunity and tried to take advantage of things. So the place where we bought our material from, our liquid material, was going out of business, and I was like, man, I could probably capture that and revamp it and offer different products and see if I could capture some of that and retain some of the business that they had. So and it was in the building that I own now. That's where I was buying this material. So then we were young kids. We were pretty young, and I went and talked to this manufacturer, and I wrote on a piece of paper what I wanted to buy the material for so I could distribute it. I slid it across the table like 85 cents. And the guy picked it up, and he was like, no way. And I was like, well, I was like, I know I already have this customer base because they were already coming there for material, and this company shut down, and they ended up giving us the opportunity. We got it for the 85 cents and created a company called BlackRock. And then we started being distribution center for a company called Sealmaster out of Sandusky. And so we started doing that and sold all different kinds of products and equipment, started eventually selling equipment.
Why 85 cents? Where did 85 cents come from?
Well, the 85, it wasn't, we just thought, hey, we could sell the product at $1.25 and we wanted a margin, and, they wouldn't go under $1. But then we said, there wasn't very many manufacturers, and said, oh, then we won't do it. We'll just continue to buy product. But we believed we could sell a lot of product for them, because I got the old call list from the guy who used to run that the store that went out of business, because we developed a good relationship. And I was like, hey, do you still have that client list? Since the company went out of business, I won't be competing against them. So if you give me their clientele, and I told him, I said, I have 400 clients right now that will continue to buy material. And so, that having a vision for that allowed them to agree upon that negotiated price. So,
Wow. Wow. Well, hey, I have the privilege, and through Noble and other team members that do this, when we do a lot of one-on-ones. And one of the things that a lot of people start a business and they don't have a why, a purpose, and a vision for their company, and they just start it.
Right.
And oftentimes can be very successful without that.
Yes, 100%.
But we all know, and we should think about the fact that clarity is the key to a successful business. And if you don't have clarity at the beginning, you're going to struggle, because clarity is then your message, your marketing message, right? And so you got to have that clarity. So how did you establish purpose, vision for your companies?
For me, I think it was really important, for people to buy into the purpose of blessed to be a blessing, and how that incorporates to each vision within all the organizations that I'm a part of. And I think the most important thing for me is the success and failures were to find the people that align with the values that are supported from blessed to be a blessing, and that align with that belief that they want to be a blessing, that they're not coming into these organizations or being a part of our high, upper level executive management team without having considered if they want to fleece and make money themselves, and say, hey, a lot of this money is going to be contributed back into the communities, back into ministries. And if you don't like participating, don't have a generous heart, that's going to really disturb you, because that's the direction we're headed. So really aligning and connecting with people that share in those beliefs and the purpose of what God called me to do. And if that doesn't align with them from biblical principles and faith, then I wouldn't recruit them in or partner with them. I'm a big believer in partnership. I think, when you have the right partnership, one can, pursue 1,000, two can pursue 10, and you have to have the right partnerships that create multiplications, because I've had some that created division, serious division. And so those are things that I was passionate about. And some, there's a lot of business owners that I'm networked with that are lone rangers. They don't want to partner with people, and good for them, because I don't think it'd be a blessing for them to partner. But for me, I network and deal with multiple relationships really well. So that's been a good thing. So.
How do you handle abundance? I mean, you get to be successful. We all want to be successful, right? In what we do, that's the goal.
Yeah.
Right. Is to be successful. We want to be successful so we can grow our business, hire more employees, serve the community, those kind of things. How do you handle abundance?
Yeah, abundance, I think, I became very principled in God's tools to stay grounded, not to, to be generous on every occasion, so that I don't become materialistic and try to hold on to, what are my returns here on earth. I care more about my eternal return and his promises of giving back into his kingdom than into my pocket, so to be generous, humbles me in the sense of, not caring about resource, and also in being generous on every occasion, it allows me to trust the source of who God's, his provision for us. and that I can lean on him in difficult times and in abundant times, and be directed of how to steward his resources and not my own. And then, use other tools of, I love to serve a lot because I don't want to become selfish. And so that's a tool he tells us to do, and to, go and serve so I don't, become prideful, that I remain humble. And so if I don't do those things, like little things, if I'm not being generous on every occasion, I'll look, I'll scroll through, social media and see all these fancy cars, and my kids are like, Dad, why don't you buy yourself a new truck? Why don't you buy yourself a Lambo? Have this, do that, buy a bigger house. And I want to, but then when I'm living in God's will and not being, conforming to the patterns of the world, but being transformed by saying, hey, be generous, okay, and give that money that I'm renewed, then I can, disqualify those internal sinful, not necessarily sinful, but desires that don't align with God's bigger vision and plan for my life. I like all those things. The only reason I would own a vehicle now is because it would be an asset rather than just a liability. And so, like, I would never indulge. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but just the person who I am and who's God grounded me to be, is that I wouldn't invest in 100, 200,000 on a car so I could drive it around. But if it's an asset, of course I would enjoy it. I love automobiles and have fun, and it could be a blessing and draw in resource. Then heck yeah, I'll have a bunch of them. And already started to. So.
We are, that's what we're doing. And it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to get to drive those, but they're paying for themselves.
Yes.
And
100%.
they're making money, and that's really the key there. Tell us how you've, and obviously we've kind of seen this, how you raise your family, but tell us how you develop leaders in your businesses, because we all know that, we learned that you're truly not a leader until you develop 2 generations of leaders after you. So it's developing a leader, and then that leader developing another leader. That's when you're a leader. Okay. And that's when you can truly step away from your business and know that it's going to be running well through that type of leadership. So how do you do that? How do you develop leaders within your organization?
Yeah, I think, for me it's really time, all my key leaders, a young man that is a minority partner in our roofing company. I invest a lot of time in mentorship, from relational, financial, and professional. And that takes a lot of time, a lot of commitment. And it's a huge return just on friendship alone. But the manifestations it creates of sharing the principles and the experience that I've had in developing business and helping him become a better leader, it takes time and encouragement and sharing, giving him the shortcuts that he can fast track and not go through all the hardships I did, but I can share, the biblical truths and principles, and it's up to him to have those applications to see the fruit and the blessing behind those things. Then I have other guys, I brought in a partner after 16 years in the paving business, and he's a parallel, we're peers. I don't have to really mentor him. He's self-motivated, loves the Lord, serves the Lord, stewards the Lord's resources well. And that's why he became a partner of mine. But, just spending time and interacting and doing, campaigns and serving together, allows me to help develop his leadership, and his leadership to strengthen and grow me as well. I'll say, I was talking about servant leadership, but I'll talk about that's one of our superhero strengths in our business.
Have you made some mistakes?
Endless, tons and tons of mistakes. And I love standing on the verse where, God is strong where we're weak. So I'm like, man, I fail a lot. So that's why I'm doing so well, because God can come into that gap. And that's where faith comes in to say, hey, you're going to make a lot of failures in business, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes, but trusting that God is your strength where you're weak. So obviously you're going to fail and make mistakes where you're weak. And then how do you find God in those weaknesses? Is it people? Is it a process? Is it faith? Is it what is it in those areas that you need to grow in, that you're weak? And I don't, sometimes I think awareness is better than trying to get strong in an area that I'm weak, because it takes double the energy I can strengthen my strengths, but it takes a lot of energy to strengthen my weakness. But if I'm aware of them, then I can allow God to fill that gap through people, through prayer, through multiple different things.
Yeah.
So
That's good. That's good. What stands out about your businesses? I mean, if anybody were to ask you, gosh, what's amazing about your business? Is it your customer service? Is it, the way you treat, your employees, those kind of, what really stands out about your businesses?
yeah, I think the culture that is created, you know, not not imposing our faith into our organizations, but blessing the organizations because of our faith and our principles and how we conduct ourselves. And so the culture of servant leadership is a huge influence in our business. So even in our org charts, it's not top down, it's horizontal. And we do that intentionally because we want to say, hey, we're not above you. We're here to actually to serve and support you. And I hired a VP of sales down in Florida, and he literally called me last week and said, hey, can you put me on top of the org chart because we're making some adjustments? And I said, no, because that's not how we lead in this organization. We're going to come alongside our staff and all of our executives and serve each other. And, even on our calls, I called my general manager and allowing him to participate in, strategy and forward movement because we're experiencing some obstacles because, a hurricane came right through our backyard 2 years ago. Over 10,000 contractors came and gobbled up all the work. So we thought we'd be sustained for 3 years, but they, devoured all this work, and we had to create all these new strategies to work outside because they're all new roofs now, and we're a roofing company. There's no roofs left to do. Maybe only 10% of all the damaged roofs just need to be repaired or replaced, and then it goes through an insurance process. But allowing my general manager to create strategy and participate in that, and say, how are we working outside our demographic now, and what are the creative strategies we need to do to sustain that market that doesn't have roofs? So we have to make these little micro shifts and things like that. But in our conversation, it was fun because the rest of our team, all the questions are like, what do you need from me? What can I do for you? How can I help you? From the CFO to COOs to executive administrators that are even in that town. And, you have a young guy that his name's Thomas is formulating and sharing these strategies and we're all, and that's it. It's not like us telling him what to do. It's us serving him and helping him accomplish the things that I think he'll campaign and do well in. So
cool. What's on the horizon? What's next? You're a serial entrepreneur, so
yep.
What's in the cooker right now, and
Yep.
What have been some of your dreams of some of those next great things?
Yeah, it's a couple of things that since I've been in fitness and combat sports, I was a boxer for many years because I got kicked off the team and I was ineligible in high school for wrestling. So my sophomore year, I was real passionate about that. Then I went down and I trained at Lulu Pearl, which was Buster Douglas's gym that he had created down in Windsor Terrace off 17th in the hood. And I went down there because I needed some outlet. And so I started boxing and became a real passionate and had a lot of success in that. So all these combat sports between wrestling and boxing, I created a great network of people that I've met. And so I'm real passionate about creating a gym that we already have one created, but we're building a 5,000 square foot gym to serve our community in Milo, Grogan. And we're going to bring in a lot of inner city kids and help them develop in combat sports. And it's called Blood Sport, through faith and sacrifice, helping develop young men. And I've got a friend named Michael Clark, who's a 3-time world champ out of Columbus, that's going to do all the training from the boxing center side. And then Lou Demas, who's going to do all the development for wrestling and grappling on that side. So I'm really excited about that. And then I'm going to do the fitness development side. And so we're going to have combat sports and fitness, and then impact a bunch of, and then that's already exists, but I'm excited to have the new facility that we're going to develop for that. So that should be, we're hoping to start that this fall. But but it's going right now. So continue to pray for that. That's Bloodsport. And then super excited about the business that we're doing together, Auto Butler. It's an amazing concept. I think it's going to be an enormous business and a huge platform for growth to have national impact and I believe global impact because there's so many legs and so many networks and so many different connections and to watch God and see what he's done to bring so many different people in is just mind blowing, just so humbling. And I'm just grateful to be able to participate and be a part of that. So that's Auto Butler. And
Auto Butler USA.
Yeah, Auto Butler.
Another company's Auto Butler, so don't just go to Auto Butler.
Yeah. And so,
I have to keep reminding these guys. We always say Auto Butler to us, but I say we got to say Auto Butler USA. Outward, right? So.
And then really just pushing the gas pedal on our roofing company to create more locations across the nation. And it's rapidly growing and it's exciting. It's a lot of fun. So doing that, and then from the ministry side, really passionate. Was real impacted by a book called Pearls of a King by Lee Deming, and he really gives great insight how to and revelation in God's word, how kings and priests work hand in hand all through God's word, and how marketplace leaders he calls kings and priests, visionaries in the ministry that run churches and different ministries, how they have to intentionally connect and network together to pray for each other, provide resources from the marketplace to help accelerate the vision that God has for his kingdom, and how that was displayed all through his word. And so it's a great revelation that really inspires me. I went through a process where, ministered to a group of friends, and they minister to us, to myself as well. And we developed a lot of businesses through that. And then, it came to a halt after COVID, but it was for great reason because we accomplished everything that God set out for us to do. And now I have a real passion. I think I have a name for it, developing priests into kings. So young entrepreneurs, to motivate them and understand why they have the giftings in the marketplace, and how to create abundance, and then how to use that abundance to have great restraint, and to care about EROI, internal return on investment, rather than just a return on their investment. So that's something I really want to groom and develop and serve in. So.
That's awesome. When I first time I got a chance to go and see some of Bobby's businesses, he owns a block. He owns half a block. So across the street is another company that actually he's looking to buy that space too. But he owns a whole block on one side of the block and a number of buildings, and obviously a lot of equipment, trucks and things like that. And so when he took me on a tour of all the buildings and everything like that, we spent the most time on the second floor of one of his operations. And there again, that's a little gym, okay, for the local kids to come to, all right, to learn boxing, to learn wrestling, to get leadership, right? And that was the most proud thing he was. I mean, here he's got multiple business and all this kind of stuff, but that's where we spent most of the time, and him sharing with that, and that's just a testimony to where his goals are and where that fruit, is coming. In addition to that, what do you see there again as some of the most important traits that somebody that wants to get into business, some of those things that they really should focus on? I mean, there again, and this is something I learned, and if there's anybody in here that's like me, growing up and getting education, it's always your strengths, great, okay? But it seems like in my younger years that I focused a lot of time trying to improve on my weaknesses rather than really focus on my strengths. And so, like I think you mentioned a little bit, I really come to believe that, hey, I'm going to truly focus on the strengths and the gifts that God's given me, and bring others around that fill those weaknesses, fill those gaps, right? So take the gifts and use them to the nth degree, okay, and mentorship and guidance and maybe partners and, people that outside organizations you can pay to handle the, have somebody else handle your books, have somebody else handle those things so that you can focus really on what you're gifted at. But what do you see are those things that if somebody's just getting started with a business, whether they're in high school, college, or an adult, those things that they can self-educate, those things that they can work on to set themselves up to be a better business person?
I think some come, for me, it comes with a lot of some inner strengths and then external strengths. So for me, internally, grit, I really think grit is one of the most important things for any business owner. If you want entrepreneurs, be an entrepreneur, that's something that you have to have. And I think there was like a Harvard study. I didn't read the book, but I really want to read the book. Some Asian female, I've seen the little highlights on social media, and she talks about the common thread amongst most successful people, and they were trying to find consistency in internal traits. And it was grit was the only one that they could find that was consistent in all of them, because everybody's so different, high education, low education, different talents and skills, but the inner trait of grit, you better find it in business to kind of trudge through and to be focused on that. And another inner strength is like patience, because if God says, wealth is created little by little, it's in Proverbs, that's really important. Because it's that compounding interest mentality. And you can see in all areas, if it be health, finance, relationship, it takes time to build on, to really develop God's blessing, and fruit. And so when I really understood that, it's difficult because social media, we're like, hey, it'll ramp up, you can be so successful. And, I'm networked, and I know you're networked with gazillions of business owners, and all through the years, from all the different relationships and partnerships and networks that I've been connected to, I would say 1% of them have had an insane, trajectory that their company became successful in 3 years. It's almost everybody I talk to is like, I second mortgage my first house, and I almost lost my business, how to do this, how to do that. That's almost everybody's story that are successful, self-made entrepreneurs. And it's not sexy, it's not fun. It's hard, it's enduring, and you have to have that grit and patience. But faith, if you say, okay, God has a plan and a purpose for me, and I'm going to go through these failures and these difficulties, and then no one ever wants to hear that when I'm mentoring them. Like, it's going to be a long grind. Expect the marathon, not the sprint, and so those traits, and obviously faith. Faith comes from hearing the word, so you have to get that word into you. And it's been the navigator of all my business decisions, my family decisions, my relational decisions. So the faith, of investing the time of educating yourself. So 90% of my education came from reading the word, and then books that support the truths in God's word to understand, process and systems and people and leadership. But it all is derived. And every time I read a book, I'm like, oh man, this verse explains that. I was like, okay, and then I go through, oh, that explains that. It's all, you can find that revelation of God's truth through there, and just keep reading it, because a lot of times, you feel like you're not getting anything out of the word. Just like when you're working out, you don't feel like anything's happening, but when you continuously do it, God, the Holy Spirit just starts bringing things to remembrance. Oh man, that scenario, and having that impact. So.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
So those are 3 things, faith, patience, and grit. Now, from external and practical things, I think what's important for me, and I wish I would have done differently, is, let's see. I think number 1 is to know yourself, and we're still going through some of those things, the working genius that I was already aware of prior to that. Do all the assessment tests. I mean, never be pigeonholed, because God has blessed you, with His Spirit that has all the gifts. But you have specific gifts. But really, what I don't like is I know people are strong at different things, but then sometimes you're gonna have to wear a hat when you're an entrepreneur and say, it doesn't matter if I'm gifted in that. I have to do it. I hate administration, but I had to do it for years. I hate management and anything that's monotonous and daily. I want to blow my brains out, but I had to do it. And so then people think I'm good at it because I'm a try hard, I'm a hard worker. And they're like, oh, so I'd have all these executives around me like, oh, you should continue to run production because you do it so well. Like, oh, I can't last another day in production, I'm gonna go crazy. And so know yourself, and you can be able to. So then everything I do, I'll do transitionally and say, hey, I'll do that for 3 months. I'll do that for 2 months, but don't ever stick me in that arena. And so really know yourselves. Spend time, ask people that are around you, like, hey, what do you think my strengths and my gifts are? It's easy to see. It's hard for ourselves to see because we don't believe anything that we're good at. Most of us don't. And so if you just ask the closest people around you and humble yourself and say, hey, what do you guys see? Oh, you're always serving people. You're always being thoughtful and considerate, or, you're rigid with this and you have this great restraint. You're always punctual. They'll tell you the things, and then just continue to put your hands to those things and to pursue the things that you're good at with your hands, and God will align the things, with your heart. I think,
Can I jump in on that?
Yeah, 100%.
Because that's something Big Noble really likes to help out with. So he mentioned Working Genius. Anybody in here taking the Working Genius assessment? Okay, good number of you, good. Those of you that haven't, as a gift to you, okay, from Noble, we would love to, and connect with Susie. We would love to have you be able to take the Working Genius assessment. It's something that it's online, takes about 10-15 minutes to do it, but it really helps you understand who you are from how you do your work, okay, and how you work with others. And it's amazing when you can better understand with clarity who you are. But we'd be happy to send you a link that we're paying for it, okay, and give you that. And this is a great example of that. My brother then, Doug, who is actually in Alabama right now, taking a young lady and helping her start getting her master's program at the University of Alabama. He helps with these assessments, okay? And if you take the assessment, you're going to get an assessment back automatically from the organization. But my brother's good about helping to kind of give you a little extra, about what your results are. And I know he'd love to do that with anybody that's in here. But he gave an example with his company that I think was really amazing. And this is key for a business owner. It's really key for yourself. They had an amazing person that was in a role. Just an amazing. The person was hitting it out of the ballpark for 2 years, just doing an amazing job. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, the person turns in their resignation. And so the principals of the company, my brother's company, are like, what? We pay this person well, this person's doing fantastic or whatever. But what Working Genius responds is in 6 categories: what your 2 superpowers or what your 2 strengths are, okay? What gives you energy. Like if you get to go to work every day and just work on your 2 superpowers, at the end of the day, it feels like you never worked. Have you ever had a day like that? Where you come home like, I can go play baseball. I can go run a mile, and you just worked 8 hours at something, right? Then there's 2 core competencies that are in the middle, okay? And these are things that you're good at, but they don't necessarily give you energy, but they don't also take energy away, all right? And then there's 2 frustrations. And those are, you work 3 hours at something and you feel like you've been working 2 days, you have no energy, you want to go home, go to sleep. You had those days too, right? Okay. Well, this person, they didn't know this, but this person was excelling for this company in their core competencies. So they weren't gaining any strength. And so the person never felt like they had any energy, nor did they feel a weakness, but they just were like, The company was doing great with it. And so that was what the issue was. So they really weren't in the right seat with that company. And so that's how assessments can help not only to understand you, but understand how you need to work with others that are in the organization. Another one is Kolbe, Kolbe, okay, .com to go. And that helps you understand yourself in a different way, okay? And so I'd strongly recommend either of those, but Working Genius, if you're interested, happy to send you a link, and Noble will take care of that for you. But one just to jump in on that.
No, heck yeah, I'll add to
Because
that.
Noble, we love to help people with
Yep, EOS, the visionary versus integrator, I'm sure some of you done it or haven't done it. That's really important to really understand that breakdown between your giftings in those areas. And there's tons of them, GEM, there's so many different ones, but take as many as you can and continue to assess yourself around your community, so it's vital. I don't need to jump back, but I think it's important because I think it'd be a blessing, because we were talking about, our strengths and our, in our organization that separate us. There was 3 that I listed. I only shared one about servant leadership. The second one is what makes us super successful is going the extra mile, because God says the blessings in the extra mile. And how we served everything, and I remember when I started seal coating driveways, I would, something as simple as, also work unto the Lord and go the extra mile, because the blessings in the extra mile. So I'm like, man, if I want to be blessed, I have to go that extra mile every single time. And if you have that mentality, then the blessing's there. And so I would weed whack the edge of the driveways to make it look nice, but then I would do around their sidewalks, the front of their house, their mailbox, and make the house look really nice. Block it off. I'd move things out of the way, blow off their patios, and do all these things, and that weren't associated with the process that we're supposed to do. And then that obviously gave us referrals and things like that. And then even till today, I was in Florida. And my son was with me, and we had a little family vacation, and we didn't have great leadership left on site on a project in Dublin. And what had happened was some of the application didn't turn out well. Their grade was off on a condo community, and so the roadways were great, but they didn't grade the driveways properly from the garages that met up to the main roadway. And so there's some ponding, and aesthetically there's some bad seams because they got cold material because the plant broke down, but they didn't fix it. And they they should have did a walkthrough, and they didn't do that. And then the board walked, our sales man had a walkthrough with 8 board members, and it was like a firing line. So then they picked out all these little details and made a big deal of it. But, and they thought it was gonna be hard to get us to own it. And I was like, well, not only are we gonna come and rip out 8 driveways and do it, but we're gonna actually have to redo some of the road because it's gonna be damaged while we're doing these driveways. So then, not only that, after we repaired and redid everything, I personally went out there and didn't expect my team to do it without me. And I went out there and physically worked for 3 days. Then yesterday, I told the community, I was like, hey, I don't like how the property looks aesthetically. It's, foundationally, it's phenomenal now. But aesthetically, it doesn't look appealing. You don't have this black appealing road. You have these roller marks and some different kind of tracks and stuff, and different shades of oil in the material because some is newer, a couple days newer than the other. And so, we said, hey, we're gonna, give you it didn't matter if we had the resources or not. We did this since we, birthed our companies. We're gonna give you a $15,000 application of sealer to make everything look uniform. And so that and I know God will bless that.
There you go.
Yeah. And so it doesn't matter if there's loss there, he'll redeem those on the back end.
Yeah.
And he always has. He's always been so faithful in those things. So that's one of our superpowers from how we serve our customers. Doesn't matter what product it is, or what trade it is. We have that same mentality and that principle all the way through, and we empower that into all of our team. And it's fun watching them, what do you have to do to go the extra mile, and just think of those things. And you have to know the blessings in the extra mile. So if you're not doing the extra mile and you don't feel blessed or you're not advancing, then invest into those type of things. And then the other one is, to be generous on every occasion. What's that really look like? You have to be so intentional. There's a great book by David Green, who's the creator and founder of Hobby Lobby. It's a beautiful book, and it really inspired me to be more intentional about how we give and why we give. Amazing book. And so for us, we started an intentional giving plan years and years ago, and we stick to it, and to watch it, be faithful and stretch ourselves and give more than we have sometimes, make commitments. And it was fun because we not only gave financial resource into ministries and our local churches, but we found ways how we could multiply that without financial resource. So we started, we did the VFW's roof down in the storm. We use all of our resources, from money made from the storms, and then, and send like bug nets and canvas to third world countries like Puerto Rico when they're hit and they don't have the resources that the United States do. Then we intentionally connect with people down there to do things like that. Or Tree of Life in Rock City last year, we redid their parking lots for repairs. On all that stuff. So we find all these creative ways to continue to give. And then you get your team participating and find, hey, we have this lady, she can't afford a roof. Can we use the material we have in our garage, our overages, and provide that? And then you're like, oh yeah, they're getting it now. And so to be generous on that, I think that has been the anchor of my success and my organizations, thinking, because God will give seed to the sower. And we're always looking for opportunities to sow seed, and God continues to faithfully bless that behind us. And we always did it. We do it out of abundance, and we do it out of lack every time. And so I would encourage you guys to that's the best partnership anybody can have in business, that you're proving to God that you trust him. And with the gifts he's given you from resource, and if you need resource, there's no better to sow that seed where there's a need, And so those are the things that really impacted our business, from servant leadership to going the extra mile and to being generous on every occasion. And then, being generous, then, you'll see in that book, Pearls of a King, about the intentionality. So I connected with the local churches and all the communities I'm connected with. And I went to them and said, hey, I'm a business owner. Can you pray for me and connect me with other business owners in your churches? I would encourage all of you to do that, and then say, hey, I don't, here's $5. That's all I can give right now. Here's 50 cents. But I just want to let you know that I want to be a conduit and be able to allow God to give through me to help advance your vision in this church, because I'm being blessed by it and being a part of this community and gleaning from it. So I want to give back to it. And if you pray for me, then you start networking, and then you get, you start meeting people with prophetic giftings and giving you, shortcuts and insights, and, God divinely networking you with people that will give you opportunities for projects and things like that. And you're just doing it intentionally to connect, but God blesses that, through his church. And then I intentionally went to say, okay, if I want to be obedient to what God's called me to do, I connected with the commissioner of the community where our building is, where we own those blocks of buildings. I said, talked to the commissioner, really connected with him. He works for the city, and also is the commissioner of Milo Grogan, and said, what are the things you guys need? What can we do? Do you have any homeowners that need a roof, need asphalt? How can we get our team to help serve during, can we create a serve day? Can we do a cleanup day? Can we provide for the rec center? Can we, paint your basketball courts? What can we do? And then now it's this amazing, network of businesses, business leaders that's transforming the community. And I'll tell you all the things that we're doing because it's so impactful. Like last year, we hosted and sponsored, and we ran a expungement opportunity for people to get their records clean. And so there's 577 people came. And the cool thing is we used a hot chicken takeover who all their businesses are ran by what was a good terminology, ex-prisoners that come out into the community, and they're all ran by ex-cons, and so they serve that community, and all these people that had felonies and misdemeanors. There was 55 paralegals and like 9 judges that came to Milo Grogan, and people were crying and celebrating. They couldn't rent, they couldn't get jobs, and all those things because the resources we provided and the mission that the community had to help impact it through just godly principles. And then we have back to school, Christmas giveaways, and we Shamrock paving and roofing provide all the Christmas gifts for all the kids every winter for the last 15 years that we host every year. So it's so fun. So we intentionally got connected with the community leaders and watched that just manifest. And then other community business owners started participating. And then we directly connected with the ministries that are in that community and started creating campaigns of how do we give back to those communities specifically with summer camps, Bible studies, and different things like that. And it's not a lot of extra work, but it's the most rewarding work. You know, and it's just really engaging and being intentional about connecting with all those different leaders, and all the things that comes from it is amazing. So those are our superpowers. And so
Those are good superpowers for sure. You know, one of the great things too that we get to do with Noble, and a lot of business people don't think about this, from the early stage of starting a business clear through you know, whatever stage they are, you know, years, 15 years, 20 years or more into having a business, is people don't realize they seem to, they might be churchgoers, might be kingdom people, you know, all of that, but they don't for some reason think that their business needs to be too. That their business needs to be a kingdom business, and that their businesses don't tithe also. All right. Your business should be tithing, completely separate from you. And the giving and all of that kind of thing should be there. And God blesses that
so much.
He blesses that. And I think Bobby and his team and his companies exemplify that. And I'm just going to add one more story real quick, because this just goes to show. We invited Bobby and his other partner, Julius, to Presence Conference. Some of you that are familiar with here at OC, you know, the Presence Conference over in Pittsburgh, at Covenant Church of Pittsburgh. Well, we invited them to go with us last year, and they knew that Covenant was having problems with their roof. Okay, so I'm like, hey, not only can you come over here, right, but you can also maybe take a look, give them some advice on their roof. Okay, and so they come over, and here Julius spends almost an entire day on the roof, and he fixed their roof. And didn't even ask permission to do so. He just went up there. Bought the ingredients, went up there, and here we're down inside. He's up on the roof. We're down inside getting all this wonderful singing and worship and great leadership and messages and everything. And he's on the roof fixing their leaks. Okay, and the leaks are no more. All right. But then also, Julius, on the way back to hotel, one of the musicians from Oasis was over there too, and his car broke down on the side of the road. Well, Julius happens to pull over, goes to the local auto place, picks up a new alternator, replaces the alternator right on the side of the road so that family can get back home. Okay, I mean, that's the kind of people that he's developing, right? And that's the leadership that you're trying to create, of being truly there again, a kingdom business, and God's going to bless that. So thank you so much for sharing and giving us just a great insight on your life and how you've developed in your family, and how you've developed businesses, and what's important to developing those businesses. And what we'd love to do now is open it up to some questions. So what type of questions? And of course, this is from our virtual audience too, of any question that you might have for Bobby. Yes, please.
Do you still do homes? We have a nonprofit there. I have a large parking area. I have a large parking area at our house, and our house is back in the woods, so we need the driveway. You do smaller, that'd be like a smaller job for you, I guess.
No,
Big for me. But
yeah.
small for you.
Unfortunately, not, because of the equipment. The size equipment I have is geared up for large commercial. So the sub base only can, like on residential, can withstand so much weight, and all our trucks and our pavers are too big.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. I can recommend someone. So
That would be my next
yeah,
question. Okay,
absolutely.
great.
Perfect. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I would like to underscore something.
Yeah.
I've been sitting here, and there's a theme to your life, and it's the theme should be to all of our lives as kingdom people. And I heard this years ago. I've gone to hundreds of conferences and seminars like this. This has really stuck out. There's only two things that need to happen to you in your entire life. And one is that you be humbled, and the other is that you be exalted. It is your job to humble yourself under the mighty hand of God. And you have certainly, that's been an underlying theme as I've sat here and listened to you, is humility. It's not about me. It's about It's about Jesus. And the other thing is that you be exalted. And the Bible tells us that if we humble ourselves under the mighty hand of God, He will exalt us. Well, here's the catch. If you insist on doing God's job, exalting yourself, He's obligated to do yours. Humble you. And so that's happens when you're young and you fail in business and you struggle and you go get yourself in a jam and so on and so forth. You know, all of it, you finally end up so humble that you surrender to God and God exalts you. And the earlier you can learn to do that, teach kids, you know, how to be selfless and humble, the better. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Because you've modeled that wonderfully before us today.
Thank you, Pastor Paul, for that wisdom. Yes, yes. Anybody else?
You know,
Any
Bob,
questions?
Bob, just a comment, Bobby, thanks for sharing. Like Pastor Paul said, when you had the situation at the condo, you know, and did you guys feel like you said that the sales guy walked with the board, right?
Yeah.
I felt like I was walking with him, you're talking about that, because we've all had that situation in some regard, you know, where, in fact, if you ask your customer how you're doing, they'll tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you want to hear it or not. But the fact is, you came in and made it right, and more than right, actually, probably, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so there is, in the sense of being humble in the business, because you could have walked away and blamed them, or you could probably other things you could have done.
Yeah.
But you took the highest road possible. So that's just good. That's just a good testimony of knowing your faithfulness with the faithfulness of those around you. And in fact, I can see the fact that you brought employees into work and you were with them. And so they got to see, hey, you're with us in it, right?
Yeah.
And my thought on the scriptural side is, the Lord's not trying to get us through life. He's just trying to be in His business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so joining in even in the stuff that's hard, you know? But
It's
that was
amazing.
good.
Yeah, amazing how faithful He is in the intricate details, you know, that God involves Himself with. That's amazing. Like when you start seeing Him in those things, like, wow, I care about those little things in my life. You know, those are good.
So it's so good.
And I'll tell you, you know, on the backside of that story too, is not only were the homeowners affected, but our sales team was affected because they live off of commissions. And so, you know, I had to humble our team and say, hey, you know, our lead sales guys that would have made the commission on that, you know, we apologized, said, hey, you know, we didn't have the proper leadership. So that really affects how your job turned out. It affects how that relationship turns out. We hope we salvage that relationship for you because it's hard work to retain a customer that has multiple properties, and then that your commission won't be affected by our production. So they're not going to pay us till we, you know, do right by them, but you can get paid to, you know, and that's how you have to really conduct your businesses. And that's going the extra mile and considering your team in that. So a lot of people are affected, but we just own the responsibility and get through it, even in bad losses and things like that. And the one other thing I don't want to share too about how to empower you guys externally is, you know, finding advisors. You know, I wish I would have found my lawyer 15 years before, and I could have been intentional about that, but I didn't know all the shortcuts and the grief that, you know, a legal team or your advisors. And God says, take your plans, you know, in Proverbs where it says, you know, take your plans to your advisors as you prepare a wage war. I wasn't obedient in that one. And so I paid some prices because I wasn't under God's will and couldn't discern those things. So I was taking on a lot of unnecessary. Now he's like a counseling session. Like I go there, I'm like, oh, great. I feel so much better because there's so things, excuse me, I took way too serious and too heavy that weren't as a big a deal, and there's other things I really needed to take as a big deal and incorporate it. And so, you know, once I started, you know, this was years ago, but I wish I would have done it at the start of my business. And I don't care how much it cost me, it's worth every penny for your advisors. And then mentorship, find mentorship in your churches. This is what Noble's for, to help give you guys the shortcuts to grow and be intentional, seek out that, most people want to help other individuals and share the knowledge that they have. And if they don't, find the ones that do and really press into them, just like, Elijah and Elijah, just keep pressing, like, I want a double portion of what you have. And if you, pursue it long enough, you'll find the opportunities that people will pour into you. And they'll give you all the shortcuts. I didn't do that young. And then when I did, my business started accelerating quickly. So, okay, sorry.
It's amazing how entrepreneurs really want to help each other,
It's true.
even if they're competitors,
Yeah.
and so take advantage of that. I mean, that's always something that we advise is take advantage of a community like that. And Noble is that community, and we want to be there as a community, for you. And we even have social events now, which is a great segue here. We have social events where not only do you come to events like this and you learn and you meet new people and you get some wisdom and that kind of thing, but we also want you to get to know the other people that are in this room and those other 900 people that have been involved with Noble, and that number just keeps growing. We now have Noble Pittsburgh. We're developing Noble Cleveland right now. Noble, New Jersey is going to be here at the end of the year. Atlanta, prophetically, we've gotten a word that Noble's going to go international. So Noble's that influence is going to keep growing. But think of all the wisdom that's in all of those new Noble locations, not just from Central Ohio, but the wisdom from Atlanta, the wisdom from Cleveland, the wisdom from Pittsburgh that we'll have, and each of those locations going to have their own events as well that'll be streamed and available for people to watch. But that's what we're trying to provide, is to give you that. So we have some great events that are coming up, and I'd like to invite